Now we are going to learn about how to secure our RESTful web services using Spring Security Basic Authentication. We are going to cover basic authentication, not advanced concepts such as OAuth and other. First of all, let's add Spring Security dependency at our pom.xml. Added Spring Boot Security Starter. We don't need to mention the version because Spring Boot parent will take care of the version for the all starter dependencies. So let's save and update our project. It's been updated. Now let's go to our main class. We need to add annotation, enable web security. So once we activate the enable web security, the security kicks in. And when we start our application, Spring Security project has in action, and it created a development user and the development user password. So it clearly mentioned that this is only for the development purpose. Let's try to access our REST endpoint. So when I refresh the REST endpoint, I'm getting the login page. So I'm entering user and the password. The password is copied from here, and you see it's a successful. We got the result. Now we are going to look at Postman, the same REST endpoint, and when I send it, I got the 401 unauthorized. So we need to pass the basic authentication here. So let's select the basic authentication type and pass user and the password which was copied from the console. When I send the request, I got the success. Now the question is, do we need to copy the password every time from our console? No, it's not required. It's a default one, and as it is mentioned, it's only for the development purpose. Let's go to the application.properties and add our basic user. The basic username is Ranga and the password is password. Let's save it, and as it is the dev tools is active, so server will be automatically restarted. And when you check the logs, this time we didn't see temporary password for the development user. So when I go here and refresh it at the browser, so when I refresh the page, I got the login. So enter the login Ranga and password. It let me in. And what about the Postman? When I send with old credentials, we get 401. And when I send with new credentials, which is Ranga and the password as password, we got success. Let's look at the Swagger documentation. Go to Swagger UI.html. Even for the Swagger documentation, we get the same login credentials. So when I use the basic username and password, and we get the Swagger documentation opened. Now, how are you going to allow Swagger documentation to be open for all of them? So in order to do that, we need to update the Spring Security and saying that allow the Swagger documentation and respect to API calls, and remaining all should be authenticated. How are we going to do it? Either we can create a new configuration class or we can update here itself. So I'm updating here itself. We need to create a bean, and that bean is security chain, security filter chain. And as part of the security filter chain, the input parameter would be HTTP security. Let's take the security. So HTTP security dot. Now we need to get authorized HTTP request which are matching with our patterns. So here we need to pass string array. So right now I'm saying is API whitelist. Let's create API whitelist. So here is a private string array of API whitelist, and we'll update the API whitelist in a moment. Now we need to say all should be permitted and all remaining and any other request should be authenticated. Now we need to return the HTTP filter chain. So security.build. So now we are building it. It throws an exception. So let's add to the throws. Now as part of the whitelist, what are all things that are required? Let's open the DevTools. Obviously we need Swagger UI. So in the whitelist, first of all, Swagger UI, following any of them, and we're going to access swagger.html in this form. And the next one is API P3 documents and following any. Let's refresh the page, and as part of it we have the Swagger UI. It will be covered here. Swagger UI standalone, all these things, and the Swagger configuration. So API docs security config, API docs v3 API docs security config, v3 API docs, and all other are there. So let's save. So after saving it, we'll be rebuilding it. Let's reload the page. Now we got all our Swagger documentation APIs that are allowed. And what about the other? So what I mean is, if I go to the Postman and I change it to the no auth, and when I send the request, I'm expecting 401. Yes, we got it 403, that it is unauthenticated. It says no, we are not authorized because we have not sent any of the user credentials. So that is coming from here, any request authenticated. This is where we got that 403 forbidden error. When I sent the basic authentication, then we got the 403 forbidden error. See the error, why we are getting it. Let's add the logs. So go to the application.properties and add logging.level.org.spring framework.security is equals to at debug level. Save the file. Now we have the logs. So let's clear the logs and send the request. Now I got the 403 error, and if you check the logs, in the log it says anonymous security condition. That means the HTTP authentication details that we sent over the request are not being passed. That's because here we have not included that. So here I am saying HTTP base and save the file. Now when you send the request, we will get the success, because this time the username password authentication token has been passed. Now let's refresh the Swagger UI and ensure that everything is working. Yes, everything is working. Now if I change it to the no auth, I'm expecting 401, working as expected. Let's run the delete API. So when I run the delete API, now I got the 401. Why we are getting the 401? Because there is no auth. Let's pass the basic authentication and send the request. Still we are getting the 401. So why it has come? Because the response must have authenticated. Let's check the logs for that same. Maximize the logs. And if we see it here, as part of it, it is trying to access this, and we got invalid CSRF token was not found. So let's disable CSRF, cross that replication forge, go to the security chain, and here CSRF and disable. So for now we are disabling it. Server has been restarted. Clear the console. Send the delete request. Now we got success. Now I would like to secure this particular endpoint with the roles, a fine-grained control over the user. So only admin users can run the delete API. So how can we do that? So let's go to here and let's add roles. And here roles, for now I'm adding as a user. And let's go to our welcome controller and go to the delete user. And here we need to use secure. So when I use secured, here I'm saying I need a role user. Here I need a role admin. In order this secured needs to work, we need to activate method level security. So let's go here, enable method security, and here we need to enable the security, enable true, and pre-post is true. Let's save all the files. Now when I send the request for the delete API, we get 403 forbidden access denied exception, because the logged in user is having user role, not the admin role. Is there any other way that we can use other set of annotations? Yes, we have few other as well. Pre-authorize, post-authorize. So these two also can help us to fine-grain our authorization over the endpoints. There is another particular one which is called roles allowed. And Here we need to give the admin. Ultimately, both will be the same, secured and roles allowed, but roles allowed is JSR 250 specification. Those are as per the JSR 250 specification. So if you ask me, I would go with the JSR 250 because that's a generic. So here it's been implemented from the Jakarta. So save all the files and let's verify. All the files has been saved. When I send it, I'm expecting 40. I got the 40. But when I send a get API, I'm expecting success. I got the success. Do we need to pass all the time the username and passwords like this? No, we can load it from the database as well. For now, we are going to do in-memory database. We are going to use in-memory credentials. That means we are going to set two different users in memory and we will be using the same to check the API and authorizations. Comment these two. Let's go to here. In order to achieve that, we need to create a bean that is in-memory authentication details manager. So here I'm saying user detail manager, and here I need to return new in-memory authentication manager. So before I send it, let's check the construction. As part of the construction, we need to send the user details. So how are you going to send the user details? So let's construct the user. We are going to construct two users. One is the user, another one is admin. So user dot with username as user and password. And here we need to use the encrypted password. To get the encrypted password, we need to have a password encoder. So we need to use password encoder. Password encoder dot encode, and the password is user password. And roles. Here I am defining role as user and build the user and save it as a user. And next, copy the same similar one, but this time it is for the admin. So I'm going to use the admin. Username is admin and the password is admin password and the roles is admin. And we need to pass both the users to in-memory user details manager. So user comma admin. Now save all the files. Now if we check the log, server has stopped. It's failed to start because the password encoder must be provided. So for the button also, we need to create a bean public password encoder, and here we are going to use password encoder factories dot create delegating encoder, which is a default one. Let's save the file. Server has been started and send the request. Now we got success. Now let's go to the delete, and delete one requires admin role and user doesn't have the admin role. When I send the request, we should get 403. We got 403. But if I send the admin, I should get pass. And admin get API doesn't have any such restriction. All requires to be authenticated. So admin is already authenticated. When I send it, we'll get the both. There is a small correction on the API whitelist. We need to prefix with slash, and I restarted the server and I try to access the Swagger documentation. Now we got the Swagger documentation. It is working as expected. Now on the Swagger documentation, how can I activate authorizations? So I can activate the authorizations. In order to do that, we need to create a security scheme. So as part of the security scheme, I need to give the name. Here is a basic authentication and description as basic HTTP authentication. And the type should be HTTP and the scheme should be basic. Save and reload the page. Now if you see it, now we have the basic auth and it's having HTTP basic and username and password. When I give the username and password, the authentication will come. Still, we need to make one more change to get that authorization to access over this API. For example, if I need to send for the get API, when I send here, try execute, we are getting a pop-up to get the username and password. For example, if I provide here user password authorize, it's been authorized, but still when I send it, I'm getting it because we need to let the controller know that to use the Swagger login user. In order to do that, in the welcome controller, we need to use a security requirement, and here name would be exactly the same as we created. So basic auth. So it should be exactly matching with the name. So let's save all the files, reload the page. Now here it is not authorized. So when I click on execute, we get username password pop-up. So when I authorize from here, user password authorize, and when I click on execute, this time it's successfully executed and we got the response, because this time it is using the authentication. We see it, the authorization has been taken from the authorize button, and here when you say logout and try to access it, now we will get the username password being asked. Now let's look at the unit test cases. So I'm going to run the unit test cases without any changes. Let's see how many test cases would be passed. So when I run the unit test cases, let's go to the JUnit, and in the welcome controller and the integration test case, both has been failed. Let's stop the server, minimize it, so we can see the list. Let's try to rerun it one more time. Except the basic one, which is a context loads, other unit test cases and the integration test has been failed. So let's look at the unit test case. So let's go to the welcome. In the welcome, what we are getting it here, if we see it, it is expected 200 and we got 401. That means authentication has been failed. So how are you going to fix this? This can be fixed using a mock user. In order to get the mock user, we need to add one more dependency to the pom.xml. Let's open pom.xml, and this time it would be test. So let's add the dependency. We need to add the Spring security test. So let's remove the version and save and download all the dependencies. Now let's go to our unit test case, and here look for mock with user. So here we are going to make one more API call for anonymous. In case of the anonymous, we should get unauthorized. So for that, here I'm going to say with anonymous user, I'm expecting 401. So for this one here, instead of the is okay, is client error. So we are going to check for the client error and take out, because there won't be any content. Now as part of change, we have made two changes. One is with anonymous user, with mock user, and with case of the anonymous user, I am expecting 401. So that's the reason I mentioned 4XX client error, and rerun the unit test cases. And this time 401 got success and welcome also got success, but remaining are failed because other place also we need to pass the mock user. So instead of it, I will pass the mock user at the class level. So each and every one will have that one except this one. When I add at the test level, the class level annotation will be overridden. So let's save and rerun the test cases. And this time, except delete user ID, everything has been passed. So when I check the delete user ID, we got 403. It's not 401, it's a 403, because the default mock user doesn't have any role. So that's it, it's been success. But in case of the delete API, we need a role which is having admin. So with that, mock user, and here I will be passing roles. As part of the roles, I am passing admin. Save and rerun. With this change, if you see it, the welcome controller unit test case has been passed, and with the mock user, the role has been set to the admin and the lead API has been success. But integration test has been failed. All integration test has been failed. Let's check this one. So here we are getting 401. Let's open the integration test cases. In the integration test cases, we are directly calling the REST template. In the REST template, we have not set any of the basic user authentication details. So let's set the basic authentication details. So I'm setting over here this .rest template dot with basic authentication. I'm saying user as a default one, and here user password, and this is going to return a REST template with that. So we need to reassign. So we are going to reassign to the REST template. Now save the files and rerun the test cases. Now if you see it, all integration test case has been passed except delete user, because the user that has been passed here is having user password, not the admin password. So how are we going to fix this one? Either we pass the admin user, so that's going to fix. So let's modify to the admin user and the password, save and rerun the test cases. Now this time all test has been passed, and create a new template, REST template for the admin. So let's copy paste the same, and here I say admin REST template, and for the admin REST template here I am passing admin and admin user and password, and I am going to store this one at admin REST template. Let's separate this one and add it after this, and we have to copy paste this similar code. So here I am taking the same, but this time everything is for the admin. HTTP client is same for both user and the admin REST template. Now let's go to the delete, and this time we are going to use admin REST template. Save all the files and rerun the test cases. So this is how we are going to secure our RESTful API with Spring Security. First, we need to enable the web security, and if we have any role level authorizations, then we need to activate at the method security with security enable flag must be set, otherwise we will get unauthorized. And post enabled, this is for the Spring Security, and JSR 250 is for JSR 250 annotations. Swagger URLs has been whitelisted by using HTTP security. First of all, we are disabling the cross-site replication forge request matches with API whitelist, which is nothing but the list of strings, and we are allowing all of them, and any other request must be authenticated. Typically, we will be adding login and logout as part of the whitelist. And other things, we are going to activate the HTTP basic. In case of the browser, user would get prompted for the username and password, but in case of the postman, we need to pass the username and password as part of the headers.